coming up on the show?
There was always arguments. There was a lot of drug use, The person that I was with caused a lot of damage.
How do you then talk to kids about addiction? What are they ready to talk about? What do they want to talk about? What do they want to hear? What do they feel ready to hear? On today's show, we discuss parenting while in recovery. We discuss some sensitive topics. Listen as long as it feels supportive and helpful for you. And if you need support, reach out and talk to someone.
Today, we're talking about kids.
The question and the topic is, how do you talk to kids about addiction?
We chose the best time to have this conversation about kids, and talking to kids just feels like a perfect fit in life right now.
We're going to start by inviting you to kind of tap into what you already know. Okay? So I want you to think about, what do children need to grow and develop into healthy humans? Just throw out some structure. Okay.
Love. A home.
Mm-hmm.
A mom.
I was going to say family, because you don't need a mom. You need somebody who's there. So you need a parent, I would say, or a guardian that takes the role of a parent.
Yep, exactly. Kids need caregivers. They need a community of people around them that love and care for them, right? So you're absolutely right.
They need a team.
Basically, yeah.
So anything else? What else do they need?
Food, clothing, shelter, a good stick.
What's the stick for?
Every kid needs a good stick.
They need trust.
So trust in relationships, like safety, safe environment. Yeah.
They need to feel safe.
Yeah.
They need to be guided. They need a role model. They need to learn.
Yeah. So opportunities to learn, opportunities.
Opportunities.
Yeah. Education.
Options, access to things.
Yeah.
Role models.
They need to have fun.
Oh, such an important one. Kids need fun. They need to play. If you think about, sometimes when we talk about play, we think there isn't much important going on, but there's actually really important things happening when kids are playing.
Like what?
They're learning.
Yeah.
They're exploring their world. They're learning.
Absorbing everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just look at this list already, right? In 5 minutes, we created this list, which means that there's a lot of love and wisdom already in the room. So you know exactly what children need to grow and develop into healthy humans. That's a start. Okay. So now let's take it a step further. What causes mental health challenges, including like unhelpful behaviors? So when you think about kiddos that are like acting out, having temper tantrums, or just struggling with low mood or anxiety, like what causes that to happen?
Stressful environments, family addictions,
divorce, separation, bullying at school.
Mm-hmm. Anger in the home, feeling alone, being depressed.
Yeah, feeling alone.
Not having a safe environment to talk about things, not feeling safe, not being open, not having somebody to be open to.
Okay. And you're right. You're right about all of it. It's all true. These are some of the factors, right? These are some of the things that happen. So like you guys mentioned, life stressors is a big one, right? Life stressors can be somebody in the family's unwell, divorce, struggles with addiction. It could be a short, like acute thing that's happened, in other words, something that's short-lived and intense, or it can be something that's like a stress that goes on for a long time. But chronic stress or extended stress over a long period of time, that also affects our health and our well-being. Now, even good things can be stressful. So if you think about like that first day of school, super stressful. You're going to have stress hormone pumping through your body, even though your first day of school is a good experience generally, or an important good thing.
Does stress actually physically affect the body?
Yes, it does.
So that's concrete proof.
Yep.
Stress is a big negative on the body. It's almost as bad as slowly being poisoned.
It's a kind of poison because stress on the body, when we have a lot of stress hormone, it keeps us distracted. It keeps us either feeling unwell. We might feel out of focus or we might feel avoidant. And just having elevated stress hormone in our body, it taxes our body. It means our body is, having to work at managing all that stress hormone, right? So the next one, and Zoe, you brought this up, is like family environment. So family environment, as humans, we adapt to our environment and we develop creative coping styles that sometimes look like familiar patterns of being in the world and interacting with our families. All of this to say, families are messy, families are dynamic. There's a lot of busyness within families, and our family environment does impact our mental health. So like you said, when there's love and structure and routines and opportunities and kids are protected, then their mental health thrives. But there can be a lot of challenges in a family environment. This is not to blame parents. It's to say, depending on what's going on, there can be challenges in a home, right? If somebody loses a job or you're adjusting, then the family environment can hold a lot of stress. And we're all impacted by that. Okay, so there's family environment. And the other piece that kind of plays a role is emotion processing. And that's where we're going to spend most of our time, is talking about emotion processing. So when do you think the adolescent brain stops developing?
18,
It's later than 18.
24,
Yeah.
24, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the human brain is in development for the first 24 years. Your kiddos, who are 12 and 11, they have an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. They're not done. They have an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. And this means that the brain is learning, it's still learning many, many important things. So sometimes you can look at them and it's like, wow, well, they can do all this stuff independently. Why can't they figure this out? And it's because development doesn't move in just an upward. Development is kind of choppy. And so what you'll notice is as your kiddos are developing, they've matured in some ways, but not in other ways. Or they can figure some things out, but they can't figure other things out. They're in development. It also means that they're trying to make sense and regulate the information that they're receiving. And so sometimes it can look like either poor behavior, or it can look like, are they pulling my leg, or are they just not getting it? We talked about this before, but that's because development is really uneven. So it's not to make an excuse, it's just to acknowledge that at this stage, there's still a lot of support that the brain needs.
So, in other words, they're supposed to act certain ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Me and Zoe had a conversation with a gentleman, Michael, and he called it the ungrateful years. Have you ever heard of that?
Not like that.
I've never heard of that. He called it, and I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Between the ages of 12 and 20, those are the ungrateful years." And I'm like, "Oh yeah."
Well, it makes a lot of sense because in development, you're actually quite self-absorbed. You're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about, how you fit in the world, and you're thinking about yourself as a person. You're going through identity development.
Identity development.
Yeah, your identity is developing, and how you see yourself fitting into the world and into your family. These are all things that, while kids aren't talking about it, nobody's really describing it this way. This is what's happening. And there's something really important that's happening with the brain in the childhood years. And it's their experience with attachment.
With
So,
attachment.
with attachment. So when you think about, think about for a minute when you had a baby and you're bonding with your baby, and you're looking at your baby and they're looking at you, and you're falling in love with this baby, and you feel connected and all those warm feelings that you have. Now imagine for a moment what happened when the baby started to cry.
Love them. You make them comfortable. You try and ease whatever pain, whether it's teething or whatever it is. You fix the problem.
When the baby cried, you started looking for how to fix the problem. Now, the baby wasn't doing anything wrong. The baby was doing what it's programmed to do. It's letting you know, I'm distressed, and you
Mhm.
don't know what it is. Do I pick them up? Do I put them down? Do I cool them off? Do I feed them? Do I stick a breast in their mouth? Do I play with them?
Yeah.
Right? So what is it? Do I need to change their diaper? And how many things would you do? Like, when would you stop?
When the baby is content and stress-free.
Exactly. Did it ever end with not being able to figure it out?
No.
So you would continue to do whatever you could do to try to soothe the baby. And you knew that it worked when the baby stopped crying. The reason why I invite us to kind of think about this is because what's happening in these moments is a really critical part of brain development that has to do with attachment. Attachment is how we meet somebody's distress and help them regulate. And so what happens is the baby cries and you respond. And when you respond in all of these different ways, you're actually working with the brain, because the baby can't figure out how to soothe itself. And so you're trying all of these things. And when the baby would stop crying, you would know, okay, I soothed them. Now, what did the baby learn?
I cry, they
Why
react.
you do. Yeah.
Yes. And that's exactly what you want. They were learning to trust that when they cried, you responded. And when you responded, things got better and they learned to trust. So it's an incredibly important thing to know about humans. So John Bowlby, he was this English psychoanalyst. He did a lot of studying on attachment. And so what he said was, these intimate attachments, the attachment between a caregiver and a baby, or you and your kids, these intimate attachments are the hub of a person's life. It becomes a template for how you learn to trust. So this dynamic of attachment is really, really important. It means that, for example, parents, when we respond to kids, we respond to their needs, what's happening is we're able to be the bigger, wiser, kind person in the room that attends to their needs, right? And whenever possible, we allow them to sort of go off and grow and develop and take risks and go out into the world, and we support them. And then when they get hurt, we respond and we help and we support. And so if you think about it in that way, what we're working with is emotional regulation. We're helping them regulate with each and every time that they're feeling distressed. Now, don't get me wrong. This doesn't mean that you have to be super attentive to every single little thing, but this is actually what's happening in the brain when you respond to them, right? It means that sometimes as a parent, you're going to take charge and say, nope, that's not okay. I'm your mom, that's not okay. And most of the time, you're going to encourage them to go out into the world and play and explore. And then when they get hurt in some way, they come back to you. They have this secure attachment with you, and they know that you're going to be there to help support them and nurture them and help them through what's happening. So that's an attachment dynamic that happens. But when it comes to attachment, here's the important information. Our early interactions while our brains are developing, our parents, our caregivers, are important bonding moments that shape how we develop. They shape our brains, including how we emotionally regulate our emotions and how we move into other relationships. So all of these dynamics that happen with your kiddos, there's actually really important experiences where things happen and then you respond to them in a way that helps them regulate. It doesn't mean that they're always going to like what you have to say. It doesn't mean that they're always going to hear what they want, but it means that as the parent, you're being responsive. And that's a really important component. If caregivers are available and emotionally attuned, so even at the beginning, when you started, you're like, oh, I'm kind of worried about my kiddo, and she seems a bit this and she seems a bit that. When we begin to emotionally attune to our kids, and we notice, and we can say to them, oh, hey, kiddo, you seem a little off today. This is what it means to emotionally attune. You may not have the answers, but when you are striving to attune with them, it means that you're starting to notice what, you might be noticing their behavior. You may have some ideas about that, but what you want to do is kind of allow the child to, develop a sense of safety and support around you. When kiddos feel secure, then even when stuff happens, they're able to manage it.
So when they feel secure, they're better able to manage the stresses in their life.
Stuff happens, right? Your kid goes to school and maybe something unfortunate happens, but when they can come home and they can talk about it and they can come home to a safe space and you're attuned to what's going on for them, then that helps them emotionally regulate and they can go back into the world feeling secure. Doesn't mean that they're going to go back into an environment that's changed, but they go back into an environment where they feel a little differently about,
Right. Still walking into the same problems, but
Mhm.
they feel more capable of facing it.
Does that make sense?
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
So we've talked about like, okay, so what kids need. We know what kids need. We also know what trips us up and what causes stress. And now we're thinking about attachment in relationships. And these are all really important things to think about when we take on the topic of, okay, so how do you talk to kids about addiction? All this stuff in mind, we're thinking about what kids need to be healthy humans. We're thinking about the things that stress them out. We're thinking about how to support them in relationships so they feel secure and they feel safe in the world. And we're thinking about their development, right? They're in this early years of figuring out who they are. They're tackling all these developmental stages. So, with all these things in mind, when we think about like, how do you then talk to kids about addiction? So, first, we want to have a safe space for them to talk.
Safe spaces.
And we've talked a lot about how important safe spaces are. And kids are no different. Kids need safe spaces too.
Right.
So, what does that mean then to create a safe space for a kiddo? Like, let's think about that. Like, what do you think creates a safe space for kids?
Kind of falls back into trusted persons, right? To have trusted people around you.
So when we talk about safe spaces, like you're absolutely right. Like creating a safe space for kids is sort of, it's being sensitive to how the addiction has impacted them. That's what it is.
Okay.
It's being sensitive to how it all impacted them. So what does that sound like? If we're sensitive to how it's impacted them, like what would that sound like when we're kind of wanting to talk to kids and create that safe space?
Creates understanding and it makes them want to open up because you're willing to hear their part of everything out.
The first thing we want to do when we're talking to kids is we want to first figure out where are they at. So developmentally, they can be little or they can be teenagers. So we're going to be thinking about that, like their developmental age, but we also want to be really sensitive to what are they ready to talk about? What do they want to talk about? What do they want to hear? What do they feel ready to hear? How can we make it safe for them? So if you think back to what Agnes was saying on the podcast, for so many kids, it was never safe to talk about it. They didn't want mom or dad to get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes a lot of sense that they then learn how not to talk about it.
Shut down.
And they can shut down. Sometimes, unless kids are told, hey, this wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just being a normal kid, doing what kids are supposed to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that we can do to set it up for kids to feel like it's a safe environment. When we take the pressure, the onus off them to, they don't have to worry about us. It's not their job to take care of us, and that your wellness is something that as a parent you're working on, not expecting them to be part of. This is where kids will tend to open up and share a little bit more.
So I have a question. I've tried certain things with my own kids to try and get my eldest daughter to kind of open up. I've told her, like, I understand all of your feelings are so okay to have. Like, I would never be upset with you for feeling the way you feel, because I know that our family went through a lot. You went through a lot. But she's still at a point that she doesn't want to talk. And she'll tell me that, Mom, I just don't want to talk about it. What do I do?
Okay. So let's see, what is she saying?
She's saying she doesn't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it. Okay, so
I
let's
asked her, I said, do you still feel upset about everything that happened? And her response is, well, I don't know. And I'm like, of course you know your feelings, you know how you feel. Well, maybe you don't, maybe you're confused, but you somewhat have a good understanding about how you're feeling about a situation. So she's just, I don't even know the word to say. It's basically, Mom, I just don't want to talk about it.
okay. So okay, so follow me down this formula. I can understand why you don't want to talk about this because
It was a very bad time. It was scary.
and I can understand why you don't want to talk about this with me now because
Maybe it's still a little bit too much for you to talk about.
and why else? And I can understand why you're telling me that you just don't want to talk about it because
I feel like she doesn't want to hurt my feelings about her feelings towards the situation.
you know your kid. This is what it means to attune. When you attune, it means that you begin to really look at what's going on for her. You put yourself aside, because I get it. I might say to you, you know what, Zoe, I totally get why you want to talk to your kiddo because you want to open up the channels of communication. You want to make up for all the lost time. You want her to know that you're there no matter what, and it's not going back to the way it was.
Yeah.
Right? So I can see that for you. But when you look at your kiddo, it's about attuning to, okay, where is she at developmentally? What is she ready for?
Yeah.
And look at how quickly you just came up with that.
Yeah.
Now, she might say, no, that's not all of it.
Yeah, that's exactly how she would probably respond.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So some of it is going to be good timing.
Oh, I like that. Good
Yeah,
timing.
yeah, good timing. Some of it is to just keep doing the things that are working, building trust, focusing on them, focusing on where your
Yeah.
life is today.
Yeah.
So with good timing, that simply means pick the right time to have that conversation when she's in a receptive mood, right?
Yeah. Do you
Well,
remember when you had a toddler
yeah.
and they had a favorite show?
Yeah.
And let's say you wanted to put them in the car?
It was not a good time. You had to put that show on.
So you didn't go, right? You waited for them.
Yeah.
Now, you weren't giving in, they weren't getting their way, but you, as a parent, you had the wisdom. You knew, not good timing. And you would say, well, we're not leaving for another 15 minutes because she's got to finish this show, right?
Mm.
And so it's the same kind of thing. Working with somebody's good timing is really recognizing that, there's certain things that they need from their environment.
Well, while we're on the topic of timing, the other day it was a rough day with me and my eldest daughter, and I was talking to somebody about just the whole situation that had happened that day and how everything went down. And he said to me, he goes, Zoe, you have to remember, you feel like you've had your kids back and you never lost them. You picked up right where you left off. Your kids, on the other hand, it's only been a year for them. So everything that you're picking up where you left off, they're picking up where they left off, and where they left off was not a good place with you. So everything that I think in a positive way about picking up where I left off, oh, I'm a mom again, I got my kids back, I can do all these things that I was doing that make me happy and what I'm supposed to be doing, they're still remembering where it was that we left off, that page that we left off on. I wasn't happy, I wasn't healthy, I wasn't being a good mom, I wasn't tuned in, right? There was always arguments. There was a lot of drug use, The person that I was with caused a lot of mental images and damage in a lot of situations when it came to my kids being around. So they're sitting with all of that right now. And it's only been a year. So even though it's like I never went without them, it's just as easy for them to still be holding on to all of that. So timing. It literally feels like I've had them forever and I never went without them. But I guess it's just going to take time, more time.
Every day that is spent attuned and creating consistency and creating an environment where you're really kind of nurturing that attachment, nurturing the relationship. This is where all the healing happens, and and trust is built. And then, there's lots of challenges with trust.
Mm-hmm.
And so over time, the trust within the relationship develops and it begins to change things.
Yeah. Because I've probably said it a million times, oh, I'm getting this done. Everything's getting better, And I failed to come through on my words a lot in the past, right? So my words, even now, they're still trying to find the trust in the things that I say. They need me to show them. Like I have to really show them, and the only thing that's going to be able to help me show them is time. My words literally mean nothing because I have said it so many times, right? With no action behind it. Oh,
So these are some of the things that are changing.
yeah.
You know, when scary things have happened, when kids have felt scared, maybe their parent was kind of scary in the way they were, um, maybe the parent appears scary, or maybe the situation is scary. Um, we call that trauma, right? Trauma just means wound. Gabor Mate talks a lot about this. Trauma means wound.
Mhm.
And, as a person moving through the world and through your life, we do experience wounds. We do experience things that are traumatic. It might be a scary event. We talked about all of these life stressors, right? You can experience a traumatic event, something that scared you. Now, the thing with trauma is we can process trauma if we have a chance to allow our emotions to be processed. So just because something scary has happened doesn't mean you can't move through it. Sometimes what happens when something traumatic has happened and we don't have the conditions to process it, then we tend to be wounded by the trauma. But if a traumatic event happens and we have a chance to kind of move through it and process it, then we heal. When we are in recovery, we're working on our own wellness. And with our kids, you might be in this place of being empathic witness to their experience. I think
Mhm.
Gabor Mate talks about this, being the empathic witness. So it means, hey, kids, some scary things happened in the past. That was hard. Creating that safe space means that you can't really push them to talk about it. You can't decide when their readiness is. And so you might just be able to create that safe space where you say,
Mm.
if you ever want to talk about it, we can talk about it. But if you don't
Yes,
want to talk about it, we don't have to.
I did leave her with that option. I did. I told her I will never ever be upset with the way you feel. And when you're ready to talk about it, just know that I am literally all ears. Like, I want to hear how I made you feel. I want to know how I made you feel so that I'm not just saying sorry for something I don't know. I can really apologize to you for how I made you feel. I can only know if you tell me.
What do you think might be hard for them to tell you that? What do you think might be hard for them?
I'm scared she feels that she's gonna hurt my feelings about it. And she doesn't want to hurt my feelings. I know she doesn't. She doesn't.
Yeah, you're right. So here's the thing. That exercise that we did before, you can do the very same thing.
Okay.
You can say, I can imagine that back then, when I was really struggling with my health and with addiction, I must have been scary. It must have been confusing. I must have been really confusing for you because you didn't know what was going on with me and you were too little to
Mhm.
understand, and nobody was telling you what was going on. But it must have been really scary for you to see me or not see me for long periods of time.
Right.
And so that's a way of, without having to ask them to tell you, it's a way for you to tell them,
Okay.
Mm.
And
right?
that sounds like it would work.
Yeah.
That really sounds good. I want to try it.
You can take it a step further by saying, I'm working on my recovery. I'm working at getting better. And this is what you can expect moving forward, right? It's a chance for you to let them know what you're working on, what your hopes are, how you're setting things up to be.
Mhm.
I'm feeling really good in recovery. Things are different. I'm available. I'm going to be here every day.
I also let them know too that, like, if there's anything that they wanted to know, if there's any questions that they've wanted to ask and they haven't, or they feel like they can't, like, I reassured them that they can, and I will tell them whatever they want to know. Absolutely anything. Literally come to me with absolutely anything and to trust that I will handle it. I don't know. I want them to trust in me. I want them to feel safe. I want them to know that they can tell me anything. They can ask me anything. And I need them to know that. I need them to understand that I will be here till the end. Like, I will help you no matter what.
So what's underneath that? Where does that come from?
What do you mean?
Where does that come, that that fierce, like, I will do anything, I'm here for you, like what you just described? What's under it? Where does it come from?
It comes from the pit of my stomach. It comes from the center of my heart. I love them more than anything.
So it comes from a place of love and just wanting to take care of them. And maybe it comes from something else too. Maybe something in this experience has heightened that for you.
I mean, I think I feel stronger on it because I have let them down before. So it makes me work extra hard to never, in any situation, let them down again.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because there was the risk once of losing them.
Mhm.
And you don't ever want to have that happen again. And you won't.
No, never. I came too close to losing them forever. Too close.
So there's a little bit of that in there too. Right?
Yeah.
What do you need to soften that a little bit? And I don't mean to take away the love. I mean to soften the intensity of it.
um Maybe once we get to that open conversation together and we're able to really break through that shell that they're putting on right now, I think that could possibly soften it. I think I'm trying so, like, that saying, you want what you can't have. I feel like it's so intense right now because she's not letting me in. And I'm like, oh my God, Talit, like, I just want you to know that I'm here. I just want you to know, like, I will do anything for you. Right? So it's just, I'm wanting what I'm not getting right now.
So when you feel like you don't have access to her, then you get heightened.
Yeah.
You get activated by that. Yeah. It's an important thing to know for yourself, right? This is one of your activators, and it comes from a very good place. It comes from a place of like pure love.
It does. It really does.
Right? And it's kind of driving this fear of like, oh, if she's not telling me, if she's not inviting me, then something's not working.
But I think it would soften up a little bit if she just let me in. She gave me just a little bit of what I want so bad. I think it'd make it a little bit more mellow.
And what if she keeps shutting you out? How will you help yourself regulate?
I don't know. I got to figure that one out.
If what I'm hearing from you is I said, hey, if you ever want to talk to me, you can talk to me. And so far the answer is no. When we talk about creating safe spaces, it's about letting kids know, hey, kiddo, I love you to the moon and back. I'm here. I know this has been a whirlwind. I know in the past some things must have been scary and confusing. You don't have to talk about it. I just want you to know that I know that. And I'm sorry those things happened. And our life today is what I'm planning on. There's going to be more of this, and here's what I plan to do. So if you ever want to talk to me, you can talk to me. Right? These are safe spaces. These now suddenly become safe spaces.
Okay.
right. Nice.